Hey, look, it's my tramily. How you doing, Governor? Have you gotten your trail legs yet? Sure do. And have the hiker hunger to match. I've been silk blazing these puds all morning, and the blowdowns, don't get me started. I've been trying to catch up with Wet Noodle because he told me there was some trail magic down the road with some vitamin B, so I'm going to try to catch him. Oh yeah, I saw him. He was in the green puffy. I think he was pink blazing. Well, he's been trying, but I'm pretty sure he's baking a cake in that hiker funk of his. He brings hiker trash to a whole new level. So if you didn't understand any of that, that's because you've just encountered hiker slang. So I'm going to go over some of the hiker slang and just kind of explain what it actually means. So let's start with directional slang. So nobo and sobo. You'll probably have seen on mine, I have a lot of sobo because I'm going southbound, meaning I'm going from Maine to Georgia, and nobo means Georgia to Maine. That seems to be where most people go, is the Maine to Georgia, or Georgia to Maine, sorry. In which case you will encounter what is called the bubble. The bubble is really the largest group of people who tend to go hiking. Roughly, they'll start around March and April, and so they're called the bubble. You'll also get people who are flip-floppers. The flip-floppers are those that will choose a spot where they want to start. They'll go one direction, they'll go to the end of that, then they'll reverse, go all the way back to whatever would be the beginning, and then complete it back up to where is considered their ending. So usually halfway is a good point. They tend to chase the weather. Oh, this hair is quite entertaining today. The Appalachian Trail is known for what's called blazes. They have the white blazes, and those are the markers that we follow to complete the Appalachian Trail. There's also blue blazing, which is side offshoot trails, usually for sightseeing and or water sites. So you can blue blaze and white blaze. Another term is yellow blazing, which is essentially not hiking at all, but actually using a car to skip sections. That's considered a no-no, as you're technically not really hiking. So, I mean, yellow blazes isn't hiking at all. And then you have pink blazing. Pink blazing essentially is when a guy fancies a girl and changes his hiking plans to follow her. So hopefully it can be harmless, sometimes creepy, but that's pink blazing. And then of course there's banana blazing, which is the same for women. So there's a term called HYOH, which is hike your own hike, and it essentially just means that you hike the hike that you need to be hiking, what you want to be doing. You're not going to adjust yourself and do things that other people want to do if you're not interested in doing them. That includes how fast or how slow you hike. There's another term called platinum blazing. Platinum blazing is those who enjoy a little bit of extra luxury but want to do the trail. They are the people who like to stop off at a lot of towns. They're more likely to be in hotels or hostels as opposed to tenting. It definitely costs a lot more, but it's definitely a lot more cushy, and that's platinum blazing. There's also something called silk blazing. Silk blazing is essentially when you're the first one up in the morning on the trail, and you get to essentially brush all the cobwebs away, so you're covered in cobweb silk. I tend to be a silk blazer, although I'm a short one, so if you're a tall guy, you're going to do your own silk blazing. So between Jeff and I, we usually cover all of the silk. And then finally there's brown blazing. You could probably guess what that one is. That's essentially hiking privy to privy. Now, there are things called trail names, which are nicknames essentially with hikers. Since you're meeting so many people, sometimes it's easier just to remember nicknames. Nicknames are usually given to you, but not always, by some sort of quirk in your personality or something you've done, that type of thing. But usually you get a nickname, and that's known to your group around you, which is your tramily, which is a combination of your family. Well, your trail family is what a tramily is. So these are the people you tend to hike around a lot, and you keep seeing are sort of in your small bubble. And, likely you're going to make some good friends out of your tramily. The next term is hiker trash. Hiker trash is an endearing term. It's not meant to be derogatory. It's what essentially hikers call themselves, because, you know, these are hikers who probably actually are carrying a lot of money on their back with all their gear, but they look like they're homeless. And the term was coined hiker trash. So essentially, everyone turns into hiker trash. Trail magic is when people, out of the goodness of their own hearts, decide to bless the through hikers or section hikers, just hikers in general, with gifts of food, rides. It can be anything, and it doesn't necessarily have to be people who aren't hiking. I mean, trail magic can occur between hikers. It's really just any sort of unexpected benefit to another person, and the person who pardon me, the person who is giving that trail magic is called a trail angel. And there are lots of well-known trail angels along the trails. I hope to meet some of them. Next we have 0 days. 0 days are essentially days that you get off trail and you don't do any hiking miles. So those are the days you're going to spend in town, probably doing your laundry, relaxing, recuperating, that type of thing. Along with 0 days are narrow days. Narrow days are essentially days that you're doing pretty much the same thing and you've maybe hiked a few miles. So you've hiked so little that you might as well call it a 0, but you did actually hike a bit. So, you know, it might be the morning into town. Next are hiker legs. Hiker legs usually happen a couple of weeks after you start hiking. It's when you can start being able to kind of crush those really big miles. Usually with hiker legs come hiker hunger, and hiker hunger is that insatiable appetite you get from burning off so many calories and you just can't eat enough food. I expect I'll get hiker hunger fairly early on. I'm a big foodie. I like it. It's really windy today. Next we have a hiker box. A hiker box is usually something that's at a hostel or a gear store or something. That it's where hikers who've come through, they dump some of their gear that they don't need or don't want or don't serve them, and it's essentially a box of stuff that another hiker can come in and decide if they need it, they can just take it. So it's a great idea. Another one is hiker midnight. Hiker midnight usually is around 9 o'clock at night, so it's when people start rolling in off the trail and they're tired and they want to go to bed. And bedtime usually tends to be around 9 o'clock. Next you will hear a term called base weight. Base weight is essentially all your stuff in your pack that is not considered a consumable. So the basic things like your clothing, your pack, your tent, those types of things. A base weight doesn't usually change unless you change out your gear. Then of course, with the idea of base weight are gram weenies. Gram weenies are those people who are really, really intense on getting every little gram off their weight. They'll be the kind that cut tags off of things, cut toothbrushes in half, and I don't know, find all sorts of very creative ways to cut every little gram so they can have the lowest base weight, which is great for them. Awesome. I'm not a gram weenie. Sorry. Another term you might hear is slack packer. Slack packers are essentially people who have arranged to have a day pack, so they're not actually carrying their full pack. Their full pack will be packed up the road by some driver or trail angel or someone, and they'll just kind of have a day pack on them so that they can crush out bigger miles, or if they're doing an extra little hike and they don't want to carry all that weight, so they make arrangements for someone to take the big pack. I'll actually be slack packing when we do Katahdin, because you don't need to pack all your gear all the way up the mountain and back down. You just kind of leave it at the base and take a day pack up. So I'll start off slack packing, but that'll probably be, I think, the only time I do a slack pack. Okay, so let's go over a few more. We have bear bags. Bear bags are essentially the food bags you hang up in the trees to keep the critters away, to keep the bears away. They should be waterproof in case it rains. Most people suck at hanging them. I probably do too. So it's just to try to keep your food safe and away from bears. Next is a puffy. A puffy is that down or synthetic sort of puffy looking coat that most hikers wear as a warm layer at night. Next we have is bear burrito. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. It's a hammocker. Someone who sits in a hammock and looks like a little burrito for a happy little bear. We have dry camping, which is camping at a campsite that doesn't have a water source, so you have to bring your water with you. So you kind of have to make sure you plan really well. Bushwhacking, kind of what I feel like I'm doing today. You're going on a bit of an overgrown trail that's not well maintained. I think we're all pretty familiar with bushwhacking. Blowdown is just really when trees have come down on trails due to avalanche, lightning strikes up, or wind, what have you. You tend to walk over them a lot. We get an awful lot on the East Coast. We're kind of familiar with that. Scrambling, I think, is pretty also self-explanatory. It's when you're climbing up rocks, usually large rocks or little rocks, with your hands and your feet, because there's just no other way to get up it safely. And there's certainly a lot more of that up in the I think Maine and Pennsylvania, where it's quite rocky. I think there's a lot of scrambling around there. Widowmakers. Widowmakers are essentially dead tree branches or trees hung up in other trees that are dead. You have to be really careful when you set up your campsite not to camp under a widowmaker, because if it gets windy and comes down, it will crush you and kill you. And that's the idea of a widowmaker. So, you kind of want to look out for that when you're setting up campsite. Vitamin I is essentially ibuprofen. Most hikers will have a fair bit of it. They probably pop it a little too often, but that is vitamin I. Vitamin B is, you don't hear it quite as often, but it's beer. I mean, hikers like beer. Who doesn't? Cameling up essentially is just when you find a water source, you chug a ton of water while you're sitting there, so you don't have to carry a whole lot to the next water source. So it just makes it easier to carry. That probably happens a lot more so on the AT, where there is a lot of water sources, but in places where there's not a lot, people just tend to camel up, hydrate really well, and then carry as much as they can. PUDs. PUDs are pointless up and downs. So a lot of the hiking you'll be going up and down, and you're kind of wondering why you keep going up and down. Why couldn't they have just made an easy grade around it? I don't know, but they want you to go up and down. Okay, so next is the PG version of the rest of the slang. So we have monkey butt. Monkey butt or churning butter essentially is when you're all sweaty and gross and all the sweat is running down your back and into your butt cheeks, and those butt cheeks are rubbing together and they're chafing. Churning butter, making monkey butt. Baking a cake, on the other hand, is essentially those people who use like baby powder or some kinds of powder to reduce the chafing, and you add powder, aka like flour type of idea, not actual flour, but and the butter, so you're making a cake essentially in your butt. So sounds appetizing. Hiker funk is essentially just a really ripe hiker who hasn't had a shower in a while, because we don't shower very often. Well, on trail you're just not showering. I mean, you can wipe down with wipes or a little bit of water, but you're gonna smell, and that's just what we all accept that. So hiker funk is just a very, very ripe hiker who maybe smells like rotten butt. Next we have the shit ticket. I think that's essentially it's toilet paper. So, you can rate that as you need to, how many tickets you need for your event that you need to do. And of course, a cat hole. So you take your shit tickets to the cat hole that you have dug, and you do your duty, number 2, in your cat hole. And hopefully you've managed to get there before you've trusted your shart. And a shart is simply a fart you should not have trusted because it came out a little thicker than anticipated. But as they say, that's what happens to hikers. If you enjoyed this or found it entertaining at least, do give it a like and thumb up, and do subscribe and follow Jeff and I on the trail. Thanks for watching.